Good evening, everyone, property developers across Australia. It's Cheryl here, and you are tuned in to the business of property. And here we usually have Tony Meredith here, and he's attending to some business appointments today, so he's left me alone. I think he's getting me back for leaving him last week. So sorry, Tony. I'm actually here today. I want to be able to give the community a bit of a review of the property event which I went to on the weekend. I attended, which was the Psychology of Property Development, which is run by the Property Developer Network, and presenting, and the hosts were Rob Flux and Tony Meredith. So both of them, which you might have seen around the forums and around the Facebook pages. And a few people have asked, to give a little bit of a rundown of what it was like. And today, so we have a special guest, and this is the reason why Tony isn't here. We have a special guest, Rob Flux, who will be joining us. I thought it would be great to be able to share and give a little bit of an insight into what the workshop is about. I want to be able to share with you the main takeaways that I took away from the weekend, which I do highly recommend for anyone in the property space, whether you're an investor or a developer. That was the one thing that I realized that it hadn't really been addressed before very much in any of the other courses that I've been to, is the psychology around it doing anything, really. So anyhow, without further ado, I'm going to invite Rob onto the stage. Rob, are you there? Neil, how are you doing?
Hi Cheryl, how are you?
Good. I realized I do this all the time. I need to get this in.
That's okay. I've had to put mine in as well, so a little bit of background noise around here.
Yes.
So great to finally make it with some technical challenges getting in the way of us coming on board before, with some compatibility issues with technology, and I have been forced to go buy an iPad mini in order to join you, because talking to Apple devices appear to be a thing.
I should have requested a commission from Apple for that.
Or I could get you to convert to the other side of the world as well. But anyway,
all right.
We could debate technology forever.
Exactly. I'm just waiting for this to hook up while it's doing that. Just bear with technology for the moment. So Rob, I want to thank you and Tony again for hosting the weekend. I went in there quite excited. Obviously, the sessions that we do, Tony and I do on a Tuesday nights are based around, a lot of it is around mindset and around property development and the mindset behind property and business. But I really like the way that the both of you, first of all, complement each other so well, and then
Thank you.
that you cover on a high level, different strategies around development, but then there is a strong focus on the mindset and psychology. And tell me how that came about, because you've been running, the Property Developer Network for 7 years now.
Yeah, we had our 7th birthday last month, so I guess thank you. I feel like it's a lot longer, and I should say, excuse me for being a little bit disheveled. I guess after a long weekend with 12-hour days and then prep before and after, I tend to get lazy for the week afterwards. So how did it come about? It came about with, I had been running some courses for quite some time. I guess as I started running the network, which actually started out with me just trying to help a few mates out, and that kind of grew. And then people started asking me, hey, can I teach them how to do things? And I kept doing the how to. because most of the other courses out there don't cover how to. They enlighten you and get you motivated, but they don't give you the actual hands-on technical side of things. So I covered that. But what I found at the end of that process was that even though people had the skills, they were still afraid to pull the trigger. And for a variety of reasons, they kept telling themselves they couldn't find a deal. They kept telling themselves that even when they found a deal, that the dollars weren't enough, or they just were not prepared to go to contract, or if they did go to contract, they'd tear it up at the last minute when it was a perfectly fine outcome. So I guess looked at a whole range of different ways of actually dealing with that. And when Tony and I started hanging out together, so I actually was the person who introduced Tony to his joint venture partner, who he's now done his 3 projects with. So I guess Tony and I go back a little bit. So I guess we got chatting, and Tony really wanted to launch his business coaching side of things, and wanted someone that he could actually use as a flagship role model person to actually endorse him. So he reached out to me and a couple of other people, and I was silly enough to say yes. He claims that I said yes because it was free, but no, it was actually genuinely a mutual partnership where both of us got something out of that. And as a byproduct of some conversations in that, where I wanted to put together a bigger course, we came up with the concept of putting together this psychology of property development course, and incorporating that as step 1 in our larger property development formula 12-month program. So it can be done as a standalone or by itself, or it can actually be done as step 1 of the whole program.
Yeah, and that's one thing I like. So I'm plugged in now, so I should be clearer. The one thing I do like is that it is a weekend course, and anyone can do it, and it doesn't matter that you whether you're doing the mentoring or not, or whatever. And what I did notice as well, that it was a whole range of experiences in terms of the scale of developers. You know, you've got people who haven't even started developing, and then you've got, you know, the couple that have done 80 duplexes, and
another revelation came out of the room after you left on the Sunday afternoon, which was somebody that has managed projects as large as 800 lot land subdivisions. And I guess that the chats that we had with them afterwards were quite enlightening as well. So it is very much intended to help anybody anywhere, whether you're in property development or not. Whether you intend to get into property development or not, you can apply a lot of those skills anywhere in your life. And what we wanted to do was make a course that was complementary to any other course that somebody had been on. So whether it's us that you come onto our 12-month program, or somebody else, we want to get you a kickstart in your process. And that's really something that aligns with my personal goals, which is to try and set 1,000 people financially free. And I don't have to hold their hands the entire way. If I can just kickstart them and somebody else takes them the rest of the way, I'm perfectly happy with that. So
that's cool, and I think that's a fantastic mindset, because that's a mindset of abundance, and you know,
absolutely,
you know, we say the word mindset. You know, it's such a huge, and I don't want to be cliche when I do mention the word mindset, because it's very much talked about in you know, I guess in social media. You know, people talk about mindset, and people talk about, you know, whether it's the hustle or but motivational videos and things like that. But it is, I can't stress enough how much I know that it has impacted me, just to be able to work on myself. Luke did a short interview talking about self-confidence and self-belief, and there was so much in what was covered on the weekend about really helping to take the steps towards self-belief and self-confidence, whether it's personally or from a professional point. So are you able to run through, without sort of sharing too much of the the inner secrets.
The secrets?
The secrets, the special secrets.
Can't give away the secret sauce, no.
No.
A bit of an overview of what we cover. Is that what you're asking?
Yep, because
Sure.
I know there's a Melbourne course that's coming up. So if anyone's interested in the Melbourne session, they might want to have an idea of what's actually covered there.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the benefit of the people in Melbourne, and I'll see if I can multitask, which being a boy I'm terrible at. I'll see if I can put the link up to that if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
I should have. I'm trying to look at one camera and type to another screen, so it's.
Well, whilst you're doing that, I won't put on the elevator music. I'll just.
So the secret sauce. So the intention is very much to walk you through a combination of two different outcomes, and to blend those two outcomes together to get you, I guess, a final outcome. And the final outcome that we're trying to get you to walk away with is a 5-year property action plan. So we go through a whole bunch of property strategies and say what is involved, what is the steps required from a success perspective, and it's dealt with very high level. I guess in 2 days it's impossible for us to teach you how to be a property developer, but we want to show you some of the shortcomings of different strategies, some of the benefits of some of the strategies, I guess some of the different ways to get into them, and give you a bit of a framework in how to choose the development strategy that fits your personal circumstances based on where you're at financially, where you're at from a time perspective, where you're at from a knowledge perspective, and where you're at from a risk perspective. So if we can walk through that and get you to lock in a single strategy, then it's much easier for you to get traction moving forward. So that's kind of part one of that. We then weave into that the mindset side of things, where we very deliberately, and mindset's one of those things where people seem to be afraid about going to a mindset course because they're, I don't need that, I'm fine. But every time somebody says that and they come to one of our events, they walk away just, I guess, bamboozled with the amount of revelations that they've found within themselves. But what we're trying to do there is that the conscious mind is only 10% of our thoughts. 90% of our thoughts come from our subconscious. So all of our cognitive biases are filters that apply within the subconscious, and the subconscious makes decisions on our behalf without us even knowing that was actually occurring. So we've got something like 20,000 synaptic impulses that happen every single second with sight and sound and smell and touch, and then we've got to walk, we've got to move our hands, we've got to digest things, and we're taking in all these surroundings, and what's happening is the brain in that subconscious is actually filtering to say, well, what does the conscious need to be aware of? And when you've got limiting beliefs in any way, shape or form, then the subconscious says, well, the conscious mind doesn't care about that, so I'm not even going to let it know that it exists. And so what we try to firstly do is expose that mechanism, bubble some of that to the surface so you can start to see some of the things that has been holding you back. So that's really day one, and Tony and I guess, joke about the fact that we break you on day one, and then day two we put you back together. So what we're really trying to do is get you to be consciously aware of what's happening, and then on day two give you some coping mechanisms to actually help you to deal with that, and also to I guess set some roadmaps in how to actually achieve that. Day two, we also very much go through a process of capturing our goals, I guess, through all sorts of areas of our life. And we have a scoring matrix that I need to trademark. It's my own concept that's gone into that, but it's and I won't tell you how the scoring works, but basically what we're trying to do is prioritize those goals that you've written down, because too many of us write down a whole bunch of goals and don't pursue them, but in our mind they play on us, and so we think that they're truly goals, but in reality many of them are actually fantasies, and yet we hold on to the baggage of not fulfilling those fantasies, And because we hold on to that baggage, it actually limits us from actually going forward on the other ones. Because if those ones didn't succeed, then of course the good ones we love won't succeed as well. And then we tie all of that up in a bow and say, well, now that we've got a development strategy that you want to execute, we've got some goals, we give you some action plans, and then you put all that together and you build yourself that 5-year property action plan.
Fantastic. And that's the matrix. So there's sort of a, like you said, that you assess where people are at.
Not too many secrets.
Not too many secrets. Without going into too much detail, I have to say it was something that I remember speaking to Tony about and going, you know, a lot of what I notice is a lot of starter developers, they get overwhelmed with the different strategies, and they're not really sure. Do I do the options? Do I do the you know, if I'm doing the land subdivision? I'm not really sure what to do, and I love the way that you're able to bring it down and help them break it down.
Absolutely, and because you, and I'm just going to call it out because you said options as a strategy. Options is not a development strategy. Options is an acquisition strategy.
Sure.
So you can apply options to any development strategy. So you might be doing subdivisions, you might be doing townhouses, you might be doing units or a number of others, and you can use options to acquire the property. I guess there's a couple of educators out there, and one in particular who promote that options is the strategy. And I want to be very, very clear that options is just an acquisition strategy. Sure. And there are many, many, many acquisition strategies, and you should learn all of them and then apply them how and when appropriate.
Yeah. And another point on that as well is that if you have, and I encourage people to constantly be educating themselves about different strategies, and I agree it's an acquisition because there's so many different types of then development strategies. It's then how you can, the more you understand, the more you're able to combine different strategies together and stack them together. Absolutely. And you can look at a site and be able to say, all right, why don't I vendor finance this, but then I can do this, and then I can do this and this. And
absolutely. And I guess it can become very overwhelming right at the start, but when you actually understand it and how you can layer them and how you can stack them together, like you've said, then you can get massive escalation on your outcomes. The biggest challenge that I see from people trying to progress and why they don't get traction, over and above their mindset, is that they cannot make a decision on what their development strategy is. And I'll give you a little bit of history, if you like, on the word of decision. So decision's actually Latin. So it comes from the word decidere, and it's actually got two portions of it. So decision is from incision, meaning cut, and the other part of the word, and I'm trying to think what it is, but it's basically side. So you decide. So which comes from suicide, right? So to cut off and to kill. So when you decide something or you make a decision, you actually cut off and kill any other options. And the problem is that most people do not decide. They do not make a decision, and they instead look at everything, and that then starts to become overwhelming. They start to become a jack of all trades and master of none, and then wonder why they don't get traction, despite the fact that they're putting lots of effort in.
Sure. And is that why do you think people do that they spread themselves thin?
The old bright shiny objectitis. They will see somebody else succeed in a development strategy over here somewhere, and they go, well, that made a lot of money for them, so I'll go do that. And before they learn the skills enough to get that well, they see someone else over here do something else, and they went, well, that's really good as well. And so they change tack, and they haven't learnt this one well enough, and they run away and then start relearning from scratch this one, and it, I guess, they've put all this effort in, but they haven't actually overcome the critical mass that's required to get the body of knowledge to become an expert in that strategy.
Okay. And so as part of your mentoring program, do you find that you do do you have to herd them back in to sort of go, you're getting distracted. Let's bring you back, and this is the strategy that you've chosen. Don't get distracted. You've made
Absolutely.
the decision.
Well, in the end, we can only guide them. Like in the end, it's their decision, their life. What we can do is we can remind them of the decisions that they made at the start, and challenge them to say what has changed in the process. To why are you moving off to tangent? And for a variety of reasons, people may choose to change tactics along the way. But we try as much as possible to get them to hold to a steady course. We get that when we start them on the program, they firstly do that psychology of property development weekend. They lock in that 5-year property action plan, and then Tony and I sit down with them with a 2-hour session, walk through that plan with them. We have a look at their assets, their liabilities, their goals, both in property development and in life, and we have a look at what some of their limiting beliefs are, and we try to understand what the roadmap of challenges are that we're going to be facing for this one person over the 12 months. And some of that is going to sit very squarely in Tony's camp, and some of that's going to sit very squarely in my camp. And what we do really well, I believe, is that Tony and I tag team quite well, because he is very excellent at the mindset side of things, but is a developer, and I'm a developer first and foremost, but I have some very good mindset skills. And so where I'm weak, he's strong, and where he's strong, I'm weak. And I guess we tag team really well and know how and when to hand over to the other person.
Yeah, I think it's great. It was definitely it's a very good dynamic. So it's fabulous to be able to see the both of you and how you interact, and understand when, like you said, you need to tag team.
Batman and Robin. So
yeah.
I'm Batman.
Of course you are. You're a D.
Well, you have to have the bald head to get that rubber mask on. So yes.
I'm pretty sure Batman's got hair.
Yeah, I don't think so. not in my fantasies.
No. Right, we'll move away from fantasy. I wanted to, there are a few before I continue. A few comments here. Scott says you're not Tony Meredith. Well, yeah, that's correct.
Duh.
Well, I think because someone called Tony Rob the last time, so he's a bit offended. Either that or you are Tony.
Well, I was there for that, and
yes.
Yeah. Well, I was there first, so
Rob was there first. I'll vouch for what Rob said. Cameron says, never wanted to do a mindset course, but after attending a year ago, it's now a daily practice of mine to learn about and develop. I'm interested to find out, Cameron, how it's changed your mindset, or how it's changed from that point to where you are now, and how that what that growth has been. I'd love if you could share that, just typing in if you'd like to. Hello, Nigel, Daniel, Logan. Hello. Fabulous. And I said one of the things, and I've been to quite a few property courses before. One, I probably went to my first. I started reading Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was in uni. And my first sort of mentoring program that I did definitely didn't talk about mindset. I was young. I went out all guns blazing, and I used to drive, get my parents to drive me around to look at properties. But one of the things, my big mindset thing was I didn't have any money. I hadn't saved any money. I wasn't really working, but I could see potential in things, and it used to get me really frustrated. And I like that you address as well the no or little money down strategies to be able to acquire properties.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you don't mind, I think, and as a general rule, and I don't know the particular course that you did, so we don't need to name that, but as a general rule, I don't think there's a very clear understanding between the difference between a mentor and a coach. And the two terms are used interchangeably and inappropriately. So a coach is very much about, I guess, unlocking your potential and getting you to take action. And a mentor is very much about the action that you take being the right action to take, having actually done the process themselves. So a coach doesn't have to have done the particular sport at an elite level to be very good at coaching, but a mentor does. So there are, I guess, a ton of coaches out there in professional sport who have never been an elite athlete, but they are excellent coaches. And the reason is because they are very good at seeing through people's bullshit. Excuse the French, but that's what it is. And one of our students had an expression that I'm going to claim, which is they become your unreasonable friend. So they have all the right intentions, but they are going to, I guess, very gently remind you that what you're doing is not in your own best interests. Whereas a friend generally doesn't want to hurt your feelings. So a coach, and a coach doesn't want to hurt your feelings either, but their whole job is to get peak performance out of you. And so that's where Tony works really, really well, is to unlock that potential in someone to physically take the action. And then when they're taking the action, they're inevitably going to hit issues and challenges and roadblocks with, hey, I don't know how to analyze this site, or the development strategy I've got doesn't seem to be working for me. And that's where, I guess, myself as the mentor, comes in. And that's why it's such a powerful combo, having both a coach and a mentor, and especially when they're in the same program.
I see so much value in that. And Cameron's just sharing his experiences. He said one thing was it stopped limiting beliefs about not having enough money or capabilities, etc., which I know a lot of developers, when they're starting off, that's one of the main hurdles. I just don't know enough. But it's the same in anything that you're starting, right? Whether it's business or property or whatever it might be, there's always the fear. And goal setting.
For my very first deal, I was exactly the same. And probably for the second and third deal as well, to be brutally honest. So, but you overcome that. And no matter how big a developer you are, whether you're a lend lease, whether you're a Metricon or those sorts of things, they all started out with their very first deal. And, if you start out with your very first deal, you can grow. How far do you want to take it?
Yeah, fabulous. Cameron goes on to say that goal setting, so that when times got tough, I fall back to my why and pulling myself through to keep moving forward. Goal setting, I know people talk about goal setting all the time, and it's something that I do harp about. And I know, I think we sometimes don't take that seriously enough. Either that or, and
no,
that's
most
one
people
thing.
Don't.
Yeah, and one thing that I really took away from the course was aligning your values with your goals.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's the ability to convert a goal that is aligned to your values, that keeps you motivated, but then is actually broken down into an action plan, and that you are physically taking action on that. And when you think of a thought, it is a fantasy until you actually start to write it down. Then it actually becomes a genuine goal. And then when you break that down into tasks, that's where it starts to become an action plan. And then when you do those tasks, that's when you actually get success.
You get closer to
absolutely.
The goal, don't you? So it's actually really cool to be able to say, this is my 5 or 10 year goal. I mean, it's great that it's out there in the universe, and I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. However, it's also taking the action to go, well, let's funnel it down and see where we have to start to begin with to actually move towards that particular
Yeah.
goal.
Always
But
start with the end in mind.
mm,
Always.
mhm,
And you'll find that the course that you're going to take is not, firstly, not linear, and it's also not a straight line. And so what you'll find is there will be obstacles that occur on your way, and your goal every single time you reach an obstacle is to work out, am I going to go under it, over it, around it, or through it? But some way you are going to overcome that obstacle, and it will deviate you from your path. But by knowing the goal, you can then, like a GPS, bring yourself back on track quite easily. That's the power of why you need to have, I guess, that focal point at the end to set your sights on.
yeah. And I'll just share a bit of a personal story. So, I came home after the weekend and I sat my husband down. I went, and it's so easy. I mean, to be caught up, particularly when you're in a job. And I work for myself, and my husband does something that he enjoys, but admittedly, so having gone through a bit of your program, and I sat down and said, he did say to me, I've almost forgotten what it is that I value and what my end goal is meant to be, because we're so caught up. And I know that quite a few people in the community are trying to transition to, from working for someone into becoming developers. And isn't hard when you're busy or you're earning good income and everything else, to get caught up in that and forget that, actually what I value is actually quite different to what I'm doing. I know that I'm a bit uncomfortable, but I don't know if I'm uncomfortable enough to really get to the next level, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. That is, I guess, the dilemma of it all is that when we are uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough, then we tend
Yes.
to not take action.
Yeah.
So the analogy that I use, it's like you're sitting in a hard plastic chair. So when you first sit down, it's comfortable, but after an hour or so, you start to get a little bit of a sore back and you wriggle and that sort of thing, but you can still put up with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you'll stand up and you'll moan about how terrible you feel, but it was still comfortable enough to stay there. And if you want to change, you might want that nice recliner, that
Yeah.
leather recliner with a handle that you pull and the legs pop up. You might want one of those and it looks really comfortable, but if you have to go over broken glass between this chair and that chair, you go, well, is the effort of going over the broken glass to get really comfortable worth the small amount of discomfort that I'm in right now? And
Sure.
most people don't want to, I guess, go through the short-term growth that I guess the broken glass represents.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the last thing that Cameron says: learning and understanding that the way I think, so I can observe thoughts rather than react to them and force me down. So I guess in terms of saying where observe thoughts, where he's reacting to things, and that's providing sort of negative sort of um,
And
I'm
I think what he's trying to say is that he's able to catch his thoughts in the moment.
right.
And by being able to catch your thoughts in the moment, you then have the opportunity to change how you respond to them. If you, and that's where that process that I was talking about before, by bubbling up those thoughts to your conscious brain, you can then have an opportunity to actually catch them. But if they're not in your conscious brain and the subconscious, you never even get visibility of the fact that they're occurring. So I think that's what he's referring to.
Yeah. Right.
And when you first go through that process, you'll find that you'll become aware of, I guess, some bad habits long after you actually did it. So it might be 3 or 4 hours after you did the bad habit, and you'll sit back and reflect and go, actually, that probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. But it's 3 or 4 hours afterwards. So what can you do about it? But the fact that you took the time to reflect means that next time it might only be 2 hours. And then the next time it might be 1 hour, and then all of a sudden it gets closer and closer, and that's when you then start to catch it in the moment. And when you can catch it in the moment, that's when you can go, well, this is my opportunity to actually make a change in my life. Yeah. What do I want to do? How do I respond rather than how do I react?
Yeah, love it. Davina has said she really liked the way that you broke out the definition of a coach and a mentor. She says a coach is someone that unlocks your potential, and a mentor points you to take the right actions for a chosen strategy.
Absolutely.
Little hearts thrown out to you, Davina. Daniel very well said. Rob, Scott, I think it just gives you so much more direction once you realize what you actually value. That's a great one. The value. I had my husband do the sort of the Ikigai exercise, and what he wrote, it was really interesting. At the end of it, it was about vegetable gardens and gardening and creating these like farms. And I went, "You're in IT. This is so far removed." But he loves the garden. He loves landscaping. He's done all our landscaping. He was out there at the end of work every weekend when we first moved, and he loves it. He enjoys it. It's meditative for him. I go, but it's far removed from what you want. He goes, that's what I value. I want to be able to give back to community with, whether it's permaculture or whatever it is. I went, well, where are your goals and where are your values? Let's try to align them up a little bit more. So I think that whole value exercise was excellent. And that's something else that I haven't really seen a lot of. I have done it myself through I have a goals book. It's a diary that I have, and it goes through quite a lot of that values and where you stand in terms of your business or your health or all the different aspects of your life, even evaluating where you're sitting in that. And I know we did exercise around that. It really is giving people a awareness, a much clearer awareness of themselves, when often we don't spend time with ourselves.
No, we don't, and we are acting almost automatically in our daily lives, and we do things a certain way every single day without taking any thought as to why we do that. And that's one of the exercises we actually try to get people to do on our weekend, is to get you to sit back and, I guess, reflect on all the different things that are in your life that you are already doing. So it's not us saying what your value is, it's you actually, I guess, pulling those values out of your own actions. And then when you know what your values are, when you can actually articulate your values, because most people inherently know what they are, but they don't know how to articulate it. But when you can articulate it, then when you've got your goal, you can then say, well, how do I make my goal relevant to my values and give that goal some meaning? So having a goal that is to make $1 million it has no arbitrary meaning. It's just make $1 million. But if you say, I want to make $1 million so that I can send my kids to school, so I can spend time with my partner, so that I can give them the quality of life that I didn't have when I was younger, when you can actually start to, I guess, put some heart and feeling into those goals, that's when they actually inspire you. And so when you do get knocked down, when you do hit those obstacles, you actually have a reason to get back up again.
Because we know there's lots of hard knocks in development.
Absolutely. Well,
every day.
So property development is a problem-solving occupation. It is all day, every day, we are solving problems. That is what we do. But it's there are two parts to property development. So problem solving and people. So all day, every day, we deal with people. It's a people business, and we happen to transact property as stock. But we deal with people when we negotiate our deals up front. We deal with people when we're engaging with our consultants along the way. We deal with people when we're doing our construction or we're getting our finance. And we deal with people who are buying our finished product at the very end. And when you start to understand people's motives and drivers and their values, so firstly, you need to be able to identify yours to be able to understand somebody else's. But when you can actually understand their values, then you can actually start to provide solutions for them that will want them to take your finished product, or will motivate them to do a good job for you, or to allow them to sell to you because you can articulate your offer in a way that allows them to see that it unlocks something within their values and within their own goals.
When that point about people, which I also really enjoyed, was doing a disc profile. And I didn't really I've seen disc profiles. I mean, I've done one for myself, and I've seen how teams can be brought together. But tell me, if you can share a little bit about why it's so important to understand different profiles.
And without giving all of it away, it is very much about the fact that how you are perceived is going to be interpreted very differently based on the personality of the other person. And so every personality trait has a thing called a balcony and a basement. So the balcony are the positive strengths, and the basement are the negative weaknesses of that personality strength. And so if somebody is of the opposite personality trait to you, they're more likely to see the negatives in you. So for me, I'm a very, decision-making dominant type personality. So I'm hard and I'm fast. I'm just about the facts and doing stuff really quick. And for someone just like me, that seemed to be a strength. But for someone who is slow and steady, then I can come across as overbearing and dominating. And I'm the same person, and I do the same actions, and one person loves me and the other person hates me. And all of us have those balconies and basements within our personality traits. So when you can identify the fact that you have those basements, and then be able to identify the personality of the person on the other side, it's whether you can soften yourself if you are dominant, or harden yourself if you're the opposite of that, in order to match and mirror the other person, so that they actually start to see past the personality and see into the person behind the personality. And when they can actually see into that, then then you can actually get a little bit further in the negotiations.
Yeah, so definitely critical in terms of building relationship and connection with people.
Absolutely.
Whether it's agents, whether it's vendors, landlords, whichever. So that's excellent. I like a little bit of an overview of your 12-month mentoring, and I'll say I haven't done it. And I wasn't
yet.
We never say never. No, I from what I've seen, and if that quality and level of information and resource is there, I think it's excellent for someone to look into. But high level summary, we've got next 10 minutes or so before we take some questions. What can you expect during your 12-month mentoring?
So I guess there's two parts to that. So there's the workshop side of things, and then there's the ongoing monthly cycle that we put everybody through. So the workshop side of things, we get you to understand, all the different layers of legislation within the different councils. There are 537 councils Australia-wide, so it's impossible to know everything about all of them. So we teach a framework that you can then apply to your council. And the practical reality is that there is federal, state and local government laws, and I guess they override from federal down to state and state down to local, and then within local there are bits that actually override each other as well. So when you can actually start to see how many rules that you need to apply to in order to do an application, it can become very overwhelming to do a site analysis. So we teach you to do shortcuts to say, well, if one's going to override the other and that's going to override something else, then those constraints on that site may actually rule it out very, very quickly. And so I teach a 10-minute process where you can very quickly look for the showstoppers that are going to take a site out. So your zoning is the maximum potential that you can get for a site, and then all of the other constraints and all the other layers of legislation will tell you whether or not you can actually achieve that maximum potential. And so we look for things that will stop that maximum potential, and if we can in 10 minutes show you how to throw a site away, then you're going to be able to lot more sites in a lot less time. And so many people look for reasons to keep a site, whereas I look for a reason to throw it away. So I want throw it away, throw it away, throw it away, throw it away. And if it then passes that 10-minute toll gate, then I go, okay, at this point, I'm now going to spend some more time on it. And so I have a 2-hour toll gate where now I'm looking for other things. And what we're trying to do is a just-in-time effort. So we're only spending the right amount of time on the properties that actually deserve that time to be spent. So we go through and we teach that. We teach how to analyse those sites. We teach feasibility processes so that no matter what your strategy is, you can then determine whether or not that can be applied, and what sorts of things councils actually do and how they do that with regards to building their city plans and their growth patterns and all those sorts of things. So that if you go to your council and you say, well, show me what your planned infrastructure upgrades are, for example, it may not be on public record, but you know that it's there, and you say, well, if I know what those infrastructure plans are, I know that councils spent a lot of money researching where that population growth is going to go, and they're only going to spend the money where they need to. So are there opportunities in and around those infrastructure spends? So just one of many things. The other difference is that we actually get them with a laptop in the classroom and genuinely analysing sites. So we get them real world to use that 10-minute tollgate to analyse sites and say, well, what would you do? And you know, the first time they put 10 minutes in, they get you know, a little bit overwhelmed, but the second time they start to get it, and the third time they start to get practice. And then what we then start to do is layer some of the sites have got very deliberate opportunities and very deliberate tricks in them that are gotchas, and so we're trying to expose them to the opportunities that lay hidden, and we are also trying to expose them to some of the gotchas in a very safe way. So if we can get them to fail safely in a way that doesn't cost money, then they will grow very, very quickly from that. So that's kind of the 3 days. There's a little bit more to it than that, but given we've only got 10 minutes, and then we go into a monthly cycle from then on, and the monthly cycle gives us an opportunity to spend have a level of touch point with our students at every week during the entire 12 months. So we have a webinar on month 1 where we teach them a new topic. We teach them joint ventures, option contracts. We give them our templates and that sort of thing. We teach them no money down strategies, teach them the plan ceiling process. We teach them entity structures, you know, should you be doing it in companies and trusts, and why would that work? We also have an advanced entities to say, well, what you do on project number 1 and what you do when you're doing 5 or 6 projects at a time might be slightly different. And so how do we actually turn that into a business? So every month we kind of build on those skills. Then week 2, we then have a group coaching call where I guess Tony runs that, and we're trying to keep everybody motivated and on track and doing their things. And Tony does like an around the grounds status update as to how and where everybody is. And what we find is that the reason why we do it in the group session is very, very deliberate. And that is because the challenge that you're having is almost guaranteed to be the same challenge that the next person is having, but you may not have it at the same time. And so if we can expose everybody to each other's problems and also the solutions all at the same time, you're going to grow very, very quickly, rather than just you having one problem and then linearly waiting for the other one to occur. The other thing we do very deliberately is we do 2 intakes a year. So the guys that are coming in on month 1 are in the same sessions with the guys that are at month 7 or month 8. And so they'll start to then see that those guys are now starting to get success because they've been through the hard yards already. And the guys that are, I guess, a little bit further into the process, when they're getting success, their success then motivates the incoming crowd to keep taking action, because they can see the hard work, but they can also see that the rewards are there. So a rising tide lifts all boats. So if we can keep those guys up, and also the fact that when you're down, if somebody else on the call is up, then they're going to, I guess, motivate you and inspire you as well. So that's week 2. Week 3 is then the mentoring sessions with myself. Again, that's a group session, and we, I guess, will go through any question that anyone has got in that process, whether it be, hey, I'm not quite sure how to lock down my strategy, or I haven't worked out my target areas, or it could be, hey, I've got this cracker deal, but I'm just having a little bit of problems with the due diligence. Can you help me out? And we again do that publicly for everybody to benefit from that process. And then lastly is the one-on-one coaching and the one-on-one mentoring, which accounts for the last week of the month. So that gives point in every week for the entire 12 months. And I am not aware of any other program out there that does that level of, I guess, integration with the student.
Yeah, that's and how many students do you have with each group?
We very deliberately keep them low. So I guess I have a maximum capacity of doing 30 students, but the practical reality is we try to keep it in around the 15 to 20 mark, because we want to make sure that we can maintain that one-on-one, I guess, outcome. We don't want a room full of 200 people where they're being preached to, rather than I guess being nurtured. I don't believe that does anybody any justice. So if you're wanting to be preached to, then I guess you're going to get the outcomes that come from that.
Yeah. And how accessible are you and Tony to the students?
They have both of our personal phone, and they can give us a call anytime. So a couple of the guys that were commenting before, so Cameron and Scott, feel free to ask them directly. It's easy for me to say how good I am, but it's much better for the students themselves to say that. Very, very approachable at any time. I run my own projects, so there are going to be times where I'm physically not available, but we do everything humanly possible to try and deal with things within 24 hours if anything comes through. But most of the time, it's actually answering the call as it comes through.
That's so critical for a lot of people doing courses, because that's what they want to be able, and constantly they're also suffering from FOMO, because they'll come across a deal and they're like, I need some feedback, I need it now. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of those, and the value of having a mentor to be able to say, let's step back and have a look at how viable is it, have we gone through the process, and then talking them through. If it's a great deal, they feel great that they've had someone there just to be able to reassure them that the numbers are right, that they haven't missed out on anything critical.
Yeah, and the process that we get them to do is lock down suburbs that have a very high probability of success. And then once they've determined that suburb, then they go through one by one and analyse all the properties within that area. So it's a little bit, I guess, front-loaded heavy from an effort perspective. But and they put that 10-minute tollgate that we're talking about onto each of those properties. And so a suburb might have 300 properties that fit your development strategy. For example, that, are the right land size, the right zoning. There might be, say, 300 of them. So you put 10 minutes effort into each one of them, and within 5 weeks, you've analysed an entire suburb, and you've, throw it away, and the ones that you keep are now on a hot list. And that hot list are, okay, I've already proven my suburb is commercially viable, and now I've proven that these sites are, I guess, have a high degree of developability. So this hot list now is, how do I actually start to farm that? Do I do letterbox drops, targeted letterbox drops for only hot properties? Do I do door knocking? Do I get my agents to go out and talk to them? Do I just sit back and watch for realestate.com or Domain to send me an alert and go, is it on my list, yes or no? Lots of different ways for that to happen. But we very much encourage our guys to be building relationships with agents to bring them their sites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cameron's he says, Tony and I used to meet at 7 a.m. via Zoom call every week in our PJs. Safe to say
I didn't know that.
We get very comfortable with each other. Goodness.
Well, I'm gonna give that a love.
Yeah. That deserves some love, and then that's dedication and a bit of commitment there.
That is sharing the love. Yeah.
I love it, and that is where I know a lot of people in the community talk about, well, how can we see ourselves actually going out with the tools, the resources, and that ability to go out on our own after the 12 months. And
so that's going to be that's going to be 100% dependent on, do you put the work in? If you join a gym membership, that does not give you six packs. But if you turn up to the gym and if you do the crunches and if you lift those heavy weights, then you will. Yeah. And so we're providing them the gym membership, and it's really up to them, I guess, to do the heavy lifting. Tony and I very squarely believe that I guess there's a percentage of it that's skills, there's a percentage of it that's headspace, and the rest of it is sheer effort and determination. And so we can own portions of that, but the student has to own the other portion. Yeah,
fabulous. Any questions from your side before I open up for the last few minutes?
No.
Or any comments? Ooh. Daniel Scotts. Hi, Mark. How are you doing? Evening, Tony. And no, that was Cameron and Rob. So just to round up before we leave, dates and some details about the Melbourne weekend. When's that on?
So the 7th and 8th of next month. So that's a week and a half away. So day one is a 12-hour day. It is a very, very big day, and very, very deliberately so. And then day two, we'll let you out early. We break you day one and we put you back together day two. So please make sure you do come back day two. So that's 7th and 8th. And if they, as I said, that can be done as an independent, course all by itself, irrespective of whether you're doing property development, whether you're thinking of doing property development, whether you've done somebody else's courses or not, that stands alone. But it then forms step one in our whole 12-month program, and that starts on the 11th, 12th and 13th of October in Brisbane. So for anyone that wants to go onto that journey.
Fabulous. Well, Sunil says, looking forward to the Melbourne event. Sunil, aren't you Sydney based?
Yes, he is. So Sunil came to our very first Sydney version of the Psychology of Property Development, And I'm pleased to say that when we first went to Sydney and ran that event, Sunil was quite instrumental in encouraging me to actually start the meetup in Sydney. And so Sunil is in training to, I guess, start to, run some of those events for those times where I can't actually fly and be there. So at the moment, I'm flying to every single event in Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. So I guess Sunil's coming along for both a refresher and I guess a little bit more hand-holding in the process to give him a little bit more of the reins.
Yeah, wonderful. I think Sunil's a fantastic person to be able to do that. So nice job, Sunil. I want to thank you, Rob, Tony as well. It was a brilliant weekend. Definitely had a lot to take away from it. I mean, I said I've done property for quite a while. I've done courses as well recently, and also years before, and it was very, very unique. Applicable from my business perspective. Well, I was able to identify where I thought I sort of crushed limiting beliefs, that there would be some niggly little ones that are still there. But the great thing is, once you get that level of self-awareness, it's easy to be able to overcome them.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
The right tools for it. So well done. Congratulations for putting together such a great little session. And for anyone that's keen, definitely reach out to Rob. You'll attach, I think there's a link to be able to book in and register.
There is a link. There is a link in there. Before you sign it off, I'll stick that link in again so people aren't trawling through there, just for ease of finding it. And yeah, would love to see them there. And if you're not sure if it's for you, feel free to pick up the phone and give us a chat. I guess love to help people out.
Fabulous. I'm glad we finally got through to having a Facebook Live, Rob.
Yeah, well, I'm available anytime, Cheryl. So now that I've been forced to buy this iPad Mini, I need to get some use out of it. So
I was going to say, are you going to use it for any other reason apart from Facebook Lives?
No, because 90% of the world has Androids, and when I do Android to Android, it works. It's only Apple to Apple that doesn't. So it'll be just talking to you and talking to Tony. So
right, and that's the most important people you need to reach out to. Oh, good.
And that's why I bought it. That is why I bought it.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. Thank you for being a special guest this evening, and I will be reaching out to you as to the link that we can add on to this post. Anyone's got any questions, PM Rob. He'll be responding to, I'm sure, comments on this thread as well. So good luck with next week's, not this coming week, but the week after, for your event.
Thank you very much.
2 weeks too. Excellent. Alrighty, Rob.
No worries.
That's all.
Good work.
That's all.
Thank you,
folks.
Cheryl. And bye, viewers. And yeah, that's all, folks.
Ciao. Bye.